Welcome to News and Brews with the Times. It's September 15th, 2025. In today's episode, we're talking with reporter Nick Watson about an audit that's being performed in juvenile court and a lawsuit against the county. Thanks for joining us, Nick.
Thanks for having me.
We'll also be talking about the new hospice facility now under construction in North Hall and the departure of the executive director for Good News at Noon Shelter.
Today will be our last episode, at least for a while. If you've enjoyed News and Brews or have other thoughts on Times podcasts, please reach out at podcastadmin at gainesvilletimes.com. For now, grab your favorite brew and we'll spill the tea on the biggest stories in Hall County, Georgia. Don't forget, you can also find all the stories we talk about at the link in our show notes and on gainesvilletimes.com. Nick, it sounds like there's a bit of a mess at juvenile court. I spent 10 years kind of in and out of juvenile court with kids that were in our home as we were foster parents. But what's going on now?
Well, we learned a while back that there's been an audit that's going on in juvenile court, and they haven't really commented about that until now. I've been talking with the court administrator and other people relevant to that. But then things kind of kicked into gear last month when a lawyer, Thomas Womack, filed a lawsuit against Hall County and some other relevant court players that he's owed about $85,000 for work that he hasn't been paid for doing indigent defense.
And how are those two things related?
So we don't have too much about what's going on with the audit and, what they've uncovered, but I do know from people that have talked about it for the story, Judge Allison Toller changed a policy a while back about attorneys and how they can get paid for the work that they do. And one of those changes included that they cannot be paid for all of that time that they spend in court. They can only be paid for the time where they are actively working on cases while they're in the courtroom.
So I know in my experience, you get called to court and then you wait for your case. And so whether it's the defects workers or the attorneys, there's a lot of waiting around. So at some point she changed this policy on whether people can get paid while they're just sitting there waiting.
Yes, from talking with Mr. Womack's attorney, there was claims that there was some sort of budget crunch or some sort of tightening of the belt. And Judge Toller was the one that implemented the change that said that you need to be actively working on cases, whether that's, looking over documents, sending emails, talking to your clients, so that you're actively working on cases to get paid that hourly wage and not just sitting and waiting for your case to be called.
So what sparked the audit?
That we don't really know for sure, at least on record. We've been trying to get more information, and we hope to have more about the start of the audit and hopefully more about the results soon.
Is it common for audits like this to happen in the juvenile court system?
I haven't heard much of things like this in terms of the juvenile court system. Obviously, as a government agency, different agencies go through audits every once in a while, but my understanding is that this is not normal.
So in the audit, they're looking at billable hours and everything that goes into a normal financial audit?
That is my understanding.
So this attorney was doing indigent defense work. What exactly does that mean?
So he was representing parents and children in dependency and delinquency cases, from what I understand. So indigent defense is when you are deemed to not have the adequate resources financially, both by assets or income, to afford a private attorney. So you are appointed one by the court system. And so he was coming in and he was on these panel of indigent defense attorneys that would be appointed to parents or children that are going through cases. The main two types of cases in juvenile court are dependency and delinquency. Dependency kind of boils down to what is the best place for a child to live and who should be taking care of that child, whether that's the biological parents, a different guardian, maybe a relative, or a foster care placement, or maybe another type of group home. Delinquency is what we most commonly see when a child gets in trouble at school. Maybe they're not showing up to school. They get charged with possibly a crime. That's what we call delinquency cases.
So were you able to uncover anything more with an open records request?
So I sent two requests essentially to the court system for one, emails between Mr. Womack and Judge Toller around the time that the issues listed in the lawsuit were popping up about these bills and invoices. And then I also sent a request for the last year of Mr. Womack's invoices to juvenile court. They originally said that the first one was exempt because the superior and state courts are exempt from the open records law, and they said that the records regarding the invoices are exempt due to an ongoing investigation that might lead to criminal prosecution. We need to be clear that they have not commented on any sort of criminal prosecution, and Mr. Womack's attorney said that, to his understanding, his client is not under criminal investigation.
So if it were to go to trial, where would that happen? Like, what are the logistics of that?
So there hasn't been any request that I've seen so far about changing the venue, but all of the superior court judges have recused themselves. That would be expected because of the fact that superior court judges are responsible for the appointment of juvenile court judges, and they oftentimes oversee what goes on there. So they have all recused themselves, and a senior judge has been appointed. Senior judges are usually superior court judges that have retired from their respective circuits, and then they can apply to become a senior judge, which is then appointed by the governor. And the senior judges make themselves available to hear these cases if a conflict arises.
So what's next with all of this?
So the county has 30 days to file response to Mr. Womack's lawsuit, which would be this week, September 18th, though extensions are often filed. So hopefully we'll get more of what the county wants to say in relation to this case. But as we've seen before, the county could obviously just say that they deny the allegations and move forward to court hearings.
So you'll be following up on this?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Nick.
A new hospice facility is being built by the Northeast Georgia Health System in North Hall.
That's off Price Road up by me, right? Where exactly?
Yeah, so it is exactly across the corner from the CVS, right there off of the corner of Thompson Bridge and Price Road.
Gotcha. Tell me more about the facility itself. Like, how big is it going to be?
It'll be about 18,000 square feet, which translates to 16 hospice beds for now.
What else will be at this facility?
It'll also have a chapel, some green spaces, and just spaces for families to gather.
So does NGHS have a hospice facility already?
They have 7 beds in a hospice unit in the hospital, but not a separate facility.
So why are they building it now?
Donors Chuck and Diane Stevens sparked the plans with a $5 million investment back in 2021. Overall, the project will cost about $18 million.
So NGHS is building a hospice home, and this couple sparked those plans, but kind of where did their inspiration come from?
Diane Stevens, one of the donors, her father actually spent the end of his life in one of these hospice home facilities up in New Hampshire. So she really wanted that for the people of the community. They don't have children of their own, so they've spent a lot of time investing in charity work and specifically the Gainesville community.
And what's the timeline for construction?
Well, they just broke ground last week, and it could open by late 2026.
The executive director of the Good News at Noon homeless shelter, a guy named Ken Gossage, has resigned.
Now that shelter has been around for a long time in Gainesville. How long had Ken been there, and what do we know about his reason for resigning?
He's been there since 2019. I believe the shelter has been around since 1989. And it seems like the board of the shelter has a somewhat different vision that involves more collaboration in the community. Ken told us that the board didn't actually mention that to him, only something about a different vision for the ministry. So it's a little bit murky.
I don't like hearing that. It's always sad to me when people resign over disagreements, and I was hoping he was just moving on to different things.
Yeah, it seems like they just had two different visions, though Ken didn't seem clear on what the board's vision really was.
Do we have a statement from the board on that?
The chairman told us this, quote, "The board of directors at Good News at Noon had a slightly different vision of the direction we wanted to move going forward, and after discussion with Ken, he decided to resign. The board felt like we needed to collaborate more in the community, and he resigned based on that." So again, it's not real clear, but that is what we know.
Collaboration in the community, and more specifically, community in general, seems like a pillar of what they do at Good News at Noon. So if they're disagreeing about that, I guess it makes sense to part ways.
Ken told us he was interested in collaboration and had been working some on that. But yes, it seems like they have some difference of where they want to go in terms of how they collaborate with the broader community.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, the board does get to decide which direction the nonprofit will go. So I guess positive spin will see more collaboration from Good News at Noon in the future.
Hopefully we'll see more collaboration across the board, and several local nonprofits and churches have formed a coalition to tackle the homelessness issue, which I think many in Gainesville know is a growing problem. And Ken said Good News was participating in that, at least to some extent. But in any case, it looks like there is some real effort behind moving forward on this issue.
Yeah, curious to see what that will look like.
Nick, do you have anything to add on this issue? You have covered it some.
Yeah, I mean, the homelessness issue has been one where there are a lot of different players that are in the game right now, and they have difference of opinion on how to tackle it and how to get people the resources, what level of care needs to be given to people that are currently homeless. So I'm interested to see what that means from reading Ben's story about what that will mean going forward for these different groups working together.
Yeah, so reporter Ben Anderson wrote one story about this after he talked with the board. Ken Gossage didn't respond immediately, but he also has talked with him at this point. So I've got a couple of stories out there, and again, those are available at the link in our show notes.
To support the kind of journalism behind today's episode, subscribe to The Times starting at just $7 a month. You'll find a link in the show notes along with all the stories we covered.
If you've enjoyed News and Brews, please drop us a note at podcastadmin@GainesvilleTimes.com to let us know what you think. That will help inform us as we make decisions about the Times podcast strategy moving forward. Thanks for listening.
Bye, y'all.